Good afternoon. For my senior research, I chose to do my topic on salamander diversity and habitat restoration. My topic is specifically looking at Bailey Mountain Nature Preserve. This is located in Mars Hill, North Carolina. I am specifically looking at salamander diversity and population size and how it is affected by habitat disturbance. Bailey Mountain used to be home to an agricultural farm that included livestock. Agriculture can destroy the land and surrounding waterways. To combat this, Mars Hill University and the Friends of Bailey Mountain started a restoration project on Bailey Mountain. The restoration efforts include controlled burns, tilling of the soil, anchoring the banks, and more. This disturbance can cause species to move out of their native habitat. I am comparing the two sides of Bailey Mountain to each other. Banjo Branch is located on the side of the restoration project, and White Oak Creek is located on the backside of the Bailey Mountain Preserve. White Oak Creek is only accessible for research, unlike Banjo Branch, which is open to the public. Through this project, I aim to show that habitat restoration does affect native species of salamanders and their populations. I chose this topic in order to help research different ways that conservation and restoration can help improve and understand how species work in an ecosystem. Using extensive research, I hypothesized that during the first year after restoration, the restored banks of Banjo Branch will have lower species richness than that of the unrestored stream, White Oak Creek. The reason being is lots of disturbance has been known to drive species away. However, this is a baseline project, and after restoration is concluded, more species should return to the restored habitat. To complete this project, I chose a total of 20 different sites. 10 were on the Banjo Branch side of Bailey Mountain, and 10 on the White Oak Creek side. I used pine untreated plywood, which was cut into 8x10s and placed 2 side by side on the ground. This method is used to give salamanders cover from predators as well as a damp and moist environment. The cover boards were placed 5 meters apart and 1 meter from the creek side. This allowed to have a wider range to sample from. When checking these sites, I would go to one side of Bailey Mountain and check all 10 sites, and then the following week, I would go to the other 10 sites and check those. And I would repeat this week after week. I also checked inside of the surrounding creek for any aquatic species as well. This method will allow for any species disturbed to return to the sites within 7 to 10 days after checking. I also used the app Light Meter to measure if different types of lightings contribute to the amount of species present. When initially setting up, I also recorded how the habitat looked and identified some key plant species. In the following slides, I will show a map of my current sites and where they are located. This slide presents the map of Smith Farm, which is located on the Banjo Branch side of Bailey Mountain Preserve. Where I'm circling in red is where the farm sits today. This farm used to do different types of agricultural things, as well as own cows on the land. Where I'm circling in yellow is where my sites are located. Each site is marked by a small yellow star. The sites run along Banjo Branch, but the majority of the sites run on a cross transect of Banjo Branch that forks off. These run against the side of a fence as well as a land bridge that is in that area. In this specific spot, different types of restoration projects have been conducted through Mars Hill University and the Friends at Bailey Mountain. These different restoration projects include a controlled burn, removal of invasive species, and planting of native species, as well as planting trees and tilling the land around it. This slide shows an overview map of the backside of Bailey Mountain Preserve. On this side, White Oak Creek is located, which is my other site that I am doing research at. Where I'm circling in yellow is where my sites are located along the creek. As you can tell, this side of the preserve is more forested and natural and hasn't gone through any of the restoration projects like the front side has, as well as this side is not as accessible by any of the public. It is only used for research purposes only. This slide is to help demonstrate how each site is set up. The two left photos are from the back side of the preserve, which is White Oak Creek side. The red marking on the farthest to the left photo shows where the water is running. As you can tell, on the White Oak Creek side of the preserve, this is a more natural and forested area. In these photos, you can see the two cover boards side by side on the ground, closest to you and farther away on the other side of the bank. On the two photos on the right, this is from the front side of the preserve, where it is more tall grass and it's a wide field filled with shrubs and grass. And you can't see the creek because there's so much brush, but the creek runs a meter in front of each cover board. But you can tell that both the cover boards are placed side by side and then pressed firmly into the ground so that the salamanders can crawl up under the cover boards and use them as protection. So far from this project, I have went out to my sites 4 different times. That means 2 times to the Banjo Branch side and 2 times to the White Oak Creek side. From these 4 different times, I have only found 2 specimens. The eastern redback salamander has been found on the White Oak Creek side, and it was found underneath some cover boards that were located on the bank of the creek underneath some logs. And then the northern slimy salamander was found in the mud underneath one of my cover boards on the Banjo Creek side. This meaning that my results so far have been inconclusive and no statistical analysis has been conducted, and I am waiting to conduct more research. However, I am using this figure from the effects of land use legacies and habitat fragmentation on salamander abundance to help support my hypothesis in saying that the restorated side will have a lower amount of salamanders. In this figure, it shows that the significance of habitat disturbance is the reason why salamander abundance is lower. Not directly tied to agricultural issues, but with agricultural issues you will have habitat disturbance, which will further support my idea that there will be less salamander diversity as well as population size on Banjo Branch. The final conclusion that I would like to draw from my project is that initially, because of the restoration, salamander population will be lower on Banjo Creek side, while population size will be higher on the White Oak Creek side. This is because the White Oak Creek side doesn't have disturbance or restoration ongoing as Banjo Branch does. I also want to draw the different future works that this project can help with. Since this project is a baseline, I hope that eventually this data can be used as an overall guideline for different species on Bailey Mountain and used as a preliminary research in order to expand on this topic and how restoration directly is affecting the species of Bailey Mountain Preserve. But also looking not just as a specific topic for Bailey Mountain, but also as just a broader subject for different types of diversity and how they're affected with restoration in other parts of the country or world. And researchers can use this as a baseline to help them set up their own experiment and collect their own data.